Hi, Jim. Welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. I'm excited to be speaking with you today.
Well, thanks very much, Andrew, and I'm my pleasure to be here.
So, you have a very interesting career throughout the years, and I'd love for you just to give a quick bio on yourself for the audience.
Okay, marketing major from Fairfield U. Worked in research, started, and then I moved into brand management. A couple of positions I've had: brand manager on Coke. I went back to New York, kissed Park and 53rd, said I'm never leaving again, and became a VP of marketing in the wine and spirit business. Left, became a president of two small divisions of Saatchi, and then in 1990, with two other guys who I worked with, started an agency, a marketing agency, because we were three former client guys, which was unique. And I was there and we focused on doing what the big agencies like to do: great work, so they get awards. We wanted to do great work that works great. And so we focused on results. And I retired in 2016, got bored, started Jim Rowe Marketing from the house. In 2018, COVID stopped all of that. And for the first time in my life, I had nothing to do. So I wrote two books on what I view as my top skills over the last 45 years, and that is critical thinking and communication. And so that's what I focus on now, as well as working on branding assignments.
So, would you say working as a marketing agency or book is your main driving force at the moment?
No. I kind of view them as separate.
Mhm.
The marketing agency. I talk to people who are looking for branding help because that is I think my core skill. And then the books are I've got two target audiences. In the executive world, it's really learning and development professionals within the
Mhm.
HR to try and help people do that. But the other area where I think has a lot of promise is in the education world. I'm actually
Mhm.
going to be on a podcast, not a podcast, a panel in Las Vegas in next month. So it's an educational conference.
Tell us about some of the big lessons you learned working for a marketing agency in New York City in the 90s.
Well, to me, it was interesting starting out with three guys and a broken IBM Selecta type and three walls. That was a little hard, but I think that our point of difference was that we did focus on trying to fix the business, but importantly, my whole focus has always been make sure that the brand is right, and
Mhm.
so often, and that's what I often got hired for. We don't really understand our brand, and we don't think it's in good shape. We don't think it's helping us, and I have been trained in a process since I was a young marketing exec to learn how to take people and take a brand through that process to identify the issues, come up with solutions, test those solutions,
Mhm.
and then know how to launch them so that they're successful.
What would you say are some of the things people most misunderstand about branding?
I think people sometimes think branding is a logo.
Mhm.
And or branding is advertising, or branding is the campaign you're running in social media, or you're at. It's none of those things. It's the gestalt. Those are the external output once you create the brand. The brand is what people think of in their heads when they hear or see your brand,
Mhm.
and it's the imagery that impacts the customer, whether it's a consumer or a B2B customer. It's what they think of your company immediately. If I said Nike, or I showed you the swoosh, you'd immediately have conjure up a brand in your head. If I showed you Apple logo, the same thing. If I show you the Mercedes, you know exactly where to position them, what they stand for. And so many the big brands do that really well. So many small, medium-sized companies, which is why I like to work in that area, they don't have that kind of experience. A lot of times there's very few marketing people there, or they're quote marketing people, but they're really tacticians.
Mhm. Is there a brand today that you really admire?
Oh, I've always been a big fan of Apple. I was one of the first 250,000 iPhone users. I think Jobs was a genius. I have a Tesla. Why? I think he's a genius as well, and I think the Tesla is a great brand. I have some issues with the car, but I look at it as like, 85%. I absolutely love it, and it's a brand that people see, they understand, they get it, and there's no advertising.
Mhm.
It's the man was, and Jobs did a lot of that. They created great advertising, obviously, with Wyden and Kennedy. But those are the brands that I'm really drawn to.
Are you going to get a Apple Vision Pro?
No, Not at all. I actually just bought my wife the Apple Watch for what did we just pass? Valentine's Day, I guess. And I went over there, and it was a surprise. And I'm seeing this thing, and you're hearing that. First of all, I'm not a gamer, and I think
Mhm.
that's where I can't imagine putting this thing on my head. It doesn't appeal to me at all. And I've just read that a lot of people are starting to return them.
Really, I haven't heard that.
No offense, Apple folks out there, but yeah, oh yeah, they're starting to get returned because it's this big awkward thing, and they're $3,500. They're expensive.
They are. I'm definitely not an early adopter to technology, but to your point about Apple and their brand, my mind immediately went to, oh, this would be a really good product. If I was going to get it, I trust them more than Facebook because I think the public perception of Facebook has really tanked in the last couple of years for new
Yeah, I'm,
merchants.
I'm, I have to be on Facebook for a number of reasons, and I still think, I think still Facebook has its place, but yes, I think the brand has tanked, and quite honestly, it's one of the older social media platforms. I mean, more
Mhm.
of my generation is on it than yours, or at least
Right,
using. You're
right.
all on it, but yeah.
I was speaking at a college 2 years ago, and I was just curious with the room and why they were on certain social media platforms. Guess why these college students were on Facebook?
Because their parents were on it.
Well, yes, and then there was a but attached to that, as they were afraid their parents were going to be posting embarrassing stuff about them,
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
and
well, that
that's the
makes
only
sense.
reason they went
Yeah,
on.
yeah, that's cool. I'm less of a poster than I used to be.
Mhm.
I post about the grandkids. You can't post anything political, so
Right.
I have a band. So I posted on my personal page as well as my band page. And sometimes pictures of the grandkids or family things, but I'm not a big poster.
Have you done any branding work for your band?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's called the Song Island Band, and I do all the work for it.
Tell us a little bit about your branding process for, you can use your band as an example, but if you're thinking about more of a small business, not someone,
Well, I'm
an
not going to use
Apple
the
or
band because that's a little silly. But
sure.
I think the branding process is you need to start, and I don't think people do this enough. You need to start with what I refer to as a brand assessment. Go in and dive into the
Mhm.
brand, find out the strengths, the weaknesses, you find out what the key features and the benefits are relative to the competition. You need the result of you coming out with a very unique brand position versus the competition and a brand
Mhm.
proposition that is something that's going to be appealing and different and really say, oh, I want to buy this brand versus other brands. And
Mhm.
we sometimes I refer to the brand essence. What are those core things that you think about when let's say the brand essence could be cool. I mean, to a certain degree, Tesla's cool. Apple used to be super cool. Now it's so common, but everybody has one. But it's still pretty cool. So those are parts. So you need to go through. It's a disciplined approach to problem solving, which is what marketing is, and
Mhm.
that's why I like it. It's the critical thinking. So you analyze, then you deduce and come up with innovative solutions. But importantly, I'm a former researcher. Then you need to test a bunch of solutions. I remember clients saying to me, which one do you like? And I had 6 clients sitting in front of me, of family members, and they had come up with a new name by a branding agency before we were hired. And they all looked at me and said, which one do you want? And I said, how stupid do I look? I said, it doesn't matter what I think, and I know you all disagree. So I'm going to alienate 3 out of 6 of you at least. And it matters what the customer thinks, whether it's consumer or B2B. So I think we need to test concepts together. And my career, I think, has been successful because I would research things and come back with this is what your customer thinks. I've run, I don't know, 75 or more focus groups myself because I want to get in front of the customer and I make sure they have to talk. Everybody says focus groups aren't good because the person dominates. I don't let anybody talk until they write their own thoughts down and
Mhm.
then they have to go around the room. So I get everybody to talk and then I have written in confirmation.
How have you seen branding shift with the rise of the internet over the years?
Well, I mean, what's interesting to me is it used to be, when I started, it was TV, radio, print,
Mhm.
outdoor, and radio. It shifted from the standpoint of you can go on 1 or 2 social media platforms and become an influencer type brand that just explodes and you don't need to. So it's shifted amazingly. That doesn't mean there still isn't stuff, but I very seldom listen to the radio anymore because I
Right.
have my own stuff, the Spotify, all those kind of things. I don't really watch commercials much because we're always fast forwarding through them. So I think it's shifted that online is the dominant factor, and it can be the cool thing about it, and the part that I like the most about it is you can measure it
Mhm.
and therefore refine as you go along.
I was listening to an interview with one of my favorite stand-up comics. His name is Bobby Lee, and he's in a movie. And so, whether you like this podcast or not, I'm more so speaking just from the data that they put up. So he appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, which I
Okay.
think gets
That's a
200
big
million.
podcast. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So to your point, it's like, why do I need to do anything else? I just went on Joe Rogan. Everyone in the world's going to know about this
yeah.
now.
So it's totally changed everything. It doesn't mean you still have to, particularly a lot of packagers brands, you still need to get into the store. You
Mhm.
still need to have, it depends upon the target audience, of course. The scary thing is that the like, let's say TikTok. I was just talking to a good friend of mine who has a 20 couple of 20-year-old, a young 20-year-old people children, and they're getting their information and everything in the world about it, and the young girl said, "Oh, we're not going to be able to vote anymore. We're not going to be able to do this. We're going to do this." And the mother was, my friend was like, "You got to look at the something else other than just TikTok." And then
Right.
apparently they're going, "Oh," after they pulled up some Google thing, they had no idea. So that's the dangerous part of it.
I want to go back to the point you're bringing up around customer feedback.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more on why that is so important?
Well, because I like what I said, it doesn't matter what we think. And the beauty of
Mhm.
the customer is they're going to give you their feedback. Now, you can't do it with just five people, but I used to try and get to, you'd have, let's say, 10 people in a focus group if you were just getting qualitative, but we do two a night, and then we do it three different times. A week apart because we refined stuff as we went along. And so by the time you finish, not only did we have good qualitative input that we saw things coalescing around one or two ideas versus the 12 we started with,
Mhm.
but you'd also at the point you have 60 people, now you're starting to see some real you should have 100, let's say, for a good test, but you start getting 60 people, you're starting to see some quantitative results too. So I think it's one of the most important things good marketers should do. There are people like Steve Jobs, where they just feel it and they get it, and that's fine. The Whitens and Kennedys, they can do some stuff, but for most people and most brands and most marketers, you ought to use the customer feedback. And if
Mhm.
you do it well, the research and how it's like with AI, the prompt is so important. With research, the questions are so
Mhm.
important and how you lead them through it. Same exact thing.
Have you been exploring AI in the last year?
Well, not the last year, but yes, in the last several months. In fact, on this panel I'm going to be on, it's going to be talking about it. But I've used it, and I'll tell you what the interesting thing is. Not a ton. I think it's a tremendous productivity saver.
Mhm.
So I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine is used to be a New York City lieutenant cop, and he is now the head of security for one of the largest insurance companies around the world. So he flies around the world making sure he's got 65 people. And he was telling me right after the holidays, he said, I always send out a letter to my 65 people around the world saying what we've accomplished in this year. And he said, I'm not a great writer. It used to take me 4 or 5 hours, half a day, and I'd sweat over it. He said, now, he said, I put in the basic stuff that I want. It takes me 30 minutes to input it. It spits it out in a second, or 2 seconds. And then he said, I took it and it didn't sound like me. So I spent a half an hour and I modified some things. But he said, I saved 4.5 hours. I think that's right
Yeah.
now. That's it. And I don't know, it may get there. I can't say what can happen. But I don't think AI is going to come up with just do it. I
Mhm.
just I don't know whether they would have come up with the name of my book being "Get Your Ducks in a Row" using my last name. I just don't think. I think the human brain is still going to outperform from a creative standpoint what a machine can do. But I could be wrong.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will.
Well, I was just going to give an example of I just went on my honeymoon and
Oh,
instead
congratulations.
of thank you. And instead of sitting there for hours trying to plan out my itinerary, vet all the restaurants, I just went to Gemini, Google's
Yep.
version of
Yep.
ChatGPT, typed in very specific instructions. It gave me a 5-day itinerary, like hour
Wow.
by hour, all the restaurants to go to. And then it ended up raining halfway through it. So I just went back to it and I told it to change, your whole list, but now it's raining and give me indoor activities. And I
Wow,
was
that's fantastic.
I was
Because
done in 30
I do all
seconds.
the planning for our trips, and we go on one or two a year. And boy, that's a lot of work. So that's a brilliant idea. I should use that.
Yeah, you can give it very specific instructions like type of diet that you have, if you like outdoor activities, wine tasting, and it will just give you everything for the town. It's pretty great.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Uh, so before we go, Jim, I want to make sure you get a chance to share some more details about the books.
Sure.
Love to share, inspiration. Tell us a little bit about it and best ways that we can learn more about them.
Well, thank you. Basically, after as being a marketing person for all those years, I started noticing in the early 2000s that the young people we were hiring out of school were not very good at critical thinking and almost bad at writing. And that's what we do. And so I thought about it for years. And eventually, when COVID hit, I decided to write a book about the foundational thing that I've used since my first brand marketing boss told me, the two things you need to be successful here are critical thinking and communication. And she gave me a 1-page, 10-step marketing brief. And that 10 step, when you're in school, they would say, before you do your essay, create an outline. That's the outline. And it helps you think through the process. It helps you make it condense and write it clear, but it also structures the thinking. And that has been my Bible for 45 years. And I figured out the other day, I've probably interviewed 500 or 700 recent grads, and I've definitely hired and worked with over 100 and trained them. And I use that as my foundation to think. So I ended up deciding that I found out the research that 75% of managers say critical thinking and communication are the top skills they look for.
Mhm.
3 studies, half to 75% of the managers say that the recent grads they hired have poor critical thinking and communication skills. And what's worse, in 2 of the studies, 2/3 to 80% of the recent grads rated themselves proficient. They don't even realize it. So I use that as the foundation why I'm doing it. I wrote the books to be a fable about ducks in business because I wanted to give examples. And so I created a story because stories are a better way to help and learn. And so the exciting thing is I haven't sold a ton of books, but they were just used last fall at Angelo State University for 2 PR communication courses. The students loved them. The 3 professors involved wrote book reviews and got published articles in their academic journals. And now I'm talking to another university about it because it's a very simple, they're quick, simple books to teach. And I finished book 1, which is about the 10-step marketing brief, and then I'll stop talking. But the second one is I wrote because I finished it. And I thought there are so many other things I've learned in 45 years to help fill in those blanks. I started writing an appendix. It was boring, so I continued the story about the ducks, and I created a subname called the adapter method, and it's an acronym that stands for a lot of what we talked about today: analyze, deduce, author, perform. I've presented a million times. Tackle, execute, evaluate, and refine. So it's the cycle of business. And so my books are 2 quick ways that anybody who reads it. Some people think it's childish. They think it's silly. They think it's childish. But you know what? Not everybody thinks Eric Clapton was God. So go figure. So I look at it like if I get 75% of the people out there saying this is really cool, and the students, I gave them a survey afterwards, they loved the books. They thought they were very easy and fun way to learn. And the survey, 9 out of 10 of them said, totally agreed, fun way to learn. I now have a tangible thing to learn. How many textbooks or business books do you walk away from? And you don't walk away with anything tangible. It's all theoretical. You come out of this thing, it's, the first one, it's 1-page, 10-step brief. It's easy. So that's what I'm doing. I'm out there selling executives, small companies, and I'm going to start coaching it too. So I'm hoping to use the books. You buy the books for your staff, and it should become part of their culture. Create a culture of communication.
And where can we find more information about it?
Very simple. Go to Get Your Ducks in a Row, but the row is spelled with an E, like my last name, ROWE. Get Your Ducks in an ROWE.com. And I've got all the positive reviews I've gotten on Amazon and lots of information, some of the speaking stuff. So that would be very helpful if people go there. That'd be great.
Perfect, Jim. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.